You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
Today we're marking the 100th episode of the Dirty Feet podcast. We've been running for 100 weeks straight without skipping a beat, basically talking about dance for up to an hour, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, every week. We're based here in Montreal. We've had the pleasure of doing some exploring this summer, and we've also been able to meet a lot of international guests coming through Montreal with their productions. So that's what we've been up to for 100 weeks, for 100 episodes. And we wanted to celebrate in our favorite way, which is, by talking about dance, because that's what we love to do. So what we've done today, you've got the three standard co-hosts that you are used to listening to, myself, Allison. We've got JD Papillon and Stéphanie Morin-Robert also in studio with us, and recurring guest host Tim Rodrigues. In addition to three other artists that we've had on the show at different times before, who we've really appreciated the company of and the presence of, and I think they enjoy talking about dance as much as we do, so it's a real pleasure to have all three of them in studio, especially on Thanksgiving Monday. So thank you so much for being here. We have Phil Fortin, who is a dance artist as well as video and photographer. We also have Margie Gillis, who I need no introduction, but I'll give you an introduction in terms of our context. We had her on the show before for The Light Between, which is the work that she put together in March 2013. That was our 19th episode, if you want to look it up. That was a conversation we had with her. We also have Dorian Nuskind-Oder, who we had on in February of 2013. She is a choreographer originally from New York, who's now working mostly in Montreal. And we were speaking with Dorian about her show at the time, which was Pale Water. And we also discussed with her an old work of hers called Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt, because we are big fans of her work. I should mention, too, that Phil has never actually been on Dirty Feet, but we did have him on Movement Museum, which is the show that JD and I used to work on over at CKUT and the McGill radio station there. And that was for an episode where we did about LGBT artists in dance. So this is the table. This is who's going on. Perhaps what we can do real quick is just get a voice sample from everybody. If we could go to my right, just say hi and why you like talking about dance.
Hi, my name's Phil, and I love talking about dance because it's something that's inspired me pretty much since birth, and just been moving ever since and haven't stopped.
I'm Margie, and I can't stop dancing, and I love dance, and I also think that it's extremely important for the world and the new metaphors that are going to rise. If we're going to go forward, we're going to need experiential wisdom, and that means dance.
I'm Dorian, and I very much agree with Margie that the experiential nature of dance research is incredibly important and valuable. And I particularly enjoy talking about it because it helps me to clarify my ideas and how I should articulate them, because I feel like often as dancers, we need to work on how we articulate what we do and how we can defend it in a language that people understand.
My name is Stephanie, and I also like talking about dance, mostly because I feel our bodies are our tools, and to learn about them, to talk about them, to feel them, to understand them. It's a lifestyle, and it's great. Let's talk about it.
Hello, Tim, and I enjoy speaking about dance because it's I like exploring through conversation people's reactions to dance and how they match up with my own, and just open conversation about dance is extremely stimulating for me.
Hi, I'm JD. Actually, the reason why I enjoy doing this show is because of the variety of responses we've just received from everyone around the table. Because basically this is what Montreal offers, and not just Montreal, a lot of different dance scenes, but dance is much more than a show. It can go from bring ideas of philosophy into a performance space. It can bring a lot of joy to people. It can bring a lot of comfort also. And I feel that the more we talk about it, the more it reaches a wider audience.
I think I like talking about dance because I'm trying to understand its secrets. And when I see work that's very inspiring or very intriguing, and I want to discuss it because I want to figure out what makes it tick and what makes me tick at the same time as an audience member to respond to it in that way, and what makes it so that I'm repulsed by another piece of work or bored by something. So that's it. I'm trying to figure it out. Although I don't think I'm ever going to get there, but I'm having a fun time along for the ride. Just to get the ball rolling, perhaps, just thinking about your background, Phil, and how more and more there's technology being infused in performance, and it's become a real integral part of a lot of people's work. And I know that all three of you work with technology to different degrees and in different ways, whether it be a video incorporated into the show or intricate lighting design or costuming or something other than just pure movement that has, infiltrated kind of what is the role of the choreographer. I would like a response to that idea of the relationship between choreography being just about creating movement and choreography being about integrating all these different elements on stage.
Well, I'll start. I'll be flat out honest. I'm an emerging filmmaker and artist, so a lot of this is still quite new for me. So I'm glad to be a part of this conversation just because I'm still discovering it all and trying to figure it out. And I'm actually in the process of writing my second grant, and in the process of doing so, realizing that I actually find it really hard to articulate some of these things. So hopefully I can learn in this conversation a little bit on how to articulate myself a little better about some of these ideas. Why I'm inspired about technology and movement. One thing, I grew up loving watching films. I think we love getting lost in stories, and that's why we lend ourselves when we go watch a movie. We want to get lost in it. We want to be immersed by it. And I think there's something about that immersive quality to film, to dance, to performance that I'm inspired by. I want to be transported to another world. And so I think performance, when done properly, can very much do that. It can bring you to a whole other world just by using the body. And it's now that we have this awesome technology, there's some really great stuff happening in the world of installation, video, sculpture. I don't know if you guys know anything like Moment Factory's doing, or what's happening. A lot of there's a big immersive theater movement happening in New York. This is the kind of stuff that I'm okay, I see elements a little bit everywhere that I'm just wanting to hone in together, and then I have this love for film. And how can I just bring it all together? And then once my audience steps into that portal that I call either a film or the doorway to that theater, it's what are the qualities and the elements I need to hone and master to allow my audience to just lose themselves. And that's the magic I look for in performance. I think I have a tendency to ramble a little bit.
No, that's lovely.
I'm just kind of putting out a few ideas out there.
That's why you're here.
We love rambling, seriously.
But yeah, last night I went to this immersive forest installation with my dad, and there's something just the quality of what light can do. When I get I come from the country, I'm a farm kid. I grew up in the back of a campground, so I'm country to even the farm kids, because I was I was a pagan child in the back of the woods, dancing by myself in the forest, and when I was in this forest last night, was beautifully lit. It was really great to see how technology was bringing out the magic in the forest, and just by lighting, there was barely any performance. There was a little bit of video installation that kind of had these ghost-like characters done through shadow and stuff. And these characters have very particular movements and sounds that they're creating in the forest. And but there was still like this separation. Like we were always watching a spectacle, and there's something about. I think that's why, like, I don't know if any of you experienced like Sleep No More in New York. Yeah. Like, there's something about like it happening all around you, and many people have different feelings about what Sleep No More or what Punch Drunk is bringing to the table in terms of performance. But I for me, for something to be immersive, like the details need to be like all around me, and I think one of the biggest elements to something being immersive is the sound. You know, I've always believed as a filmmaker that like my eyes bring me into the world and the sound brings the world into me. And so like sound, be it for dance production or film production, can make or break a piece. Because if the world's not coming into you, then how can you feel like you're a part of it? I'm going to leave it there and I'll jump back in the conversation in a little bit.
I think that one of the things I'd like to pick up on is the immersive quality of art and how it transports you. I think one of the important and lovely things about that, or certainly what engages me, let's just be selfish here, Margie, just what engages me with it is the transformative quality, how we dive into these worlds, we go there, and we are modeled, or it's modeled for us, or helps us model and learn the transformative, how to make shift from all the stuck fear, mucky bits into something wonderful and beautiful, and helps us renew ourselves and go further. I think that if you see something beautiful, you should go see it again. As Ted Robinson, the wonderful Ted Robinson says, and if you see something you really hate, go see that again too. You know, because it's engaged you, it's grabbed you in some kind of way, and has juice for you and modeling for you. I'm considered a bit of a purist because I really love. I really like to stick with the body. My lighting designer, Pierre Lavoie, who's been my lighting designer for over 30 years, I absolutely adore working with him. I adore collaborating with him. I think that that's such a pure and fine relationship we have. Music is an element, the floor is the element, the audience is the element, and and costuming, whatever, but costuming, yes. And so those already are a lot of elements for me. I find it disconcerting when I go to a show and I start watching a screen instead of a person. And it upsets me, actually, from a moral standpoint. However, I see its point, and I love that, and go see it twice because it irritates the heck out of me. And but for the most part, that's also an economic problem, right? There's, I don't have money to involve all those other elements, and if I don't have money to involve all those other elements, you figure, oh my gosh. So I'm very excited about the body going forward, and I love the new technologies, but I really am really down to what can a human being do, and what can Mother Nature do, and what can we. And I think we're going to be more and more performing outside of theater. I love film, but I think that that's a translation of what's on stage, or that experience. That's it.
Well, I'll continue just by going back to what you're saying. I totally agree with that. That's why I say, like, if a performance is done correctly, I think technology is only supposed to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Like, I think about, like, Shakespeare. Shakespeare only, like, they had very few props, very few costumes, because his words were, like, everything was in there. If the performers performed properly, like, you were transported there.
Yes.
You didn't need everything else. And I guess that's also my philosophy when I'm directing and doing dramaturgy. It's like, how can I bring the performance out of you and then just fill in the details with a little bit of technology magic?
I wish everybody could see your face light up like a candle. It's so beautiful. As you talk, you're like, wow! It's really lovely. It's really, really great. Yeah, you.
When I get passionate.
We are passionate people. We are passionate people. Yeah.
There's a lot of things being said in there about almost the. I'll just go back to what you said, that the technology should just fill in the details. There is, and also, Margie, you said that there's an economic thing that's happening as well.
Yeah.
They're kind of almost related. Some people are using the desire is there to integrate technology, because technology is rampant right now in live performance. If you go see any Broadway show or operas, or like the technology doesn't seem like it's there, but there's a lot of technology behind the scenes in video and in lighting, automated lighting, and all those things. What I wanted to say was a bit in reaction to the filling in the details and Shakespeare and whatnot. I think there needs to be a little more trust in the artists that come with the technology. There have been many artists who have worked specifically in emerging technologies that have become pioneers and have opened up their oeuvre to a larger audience. Like Namjoon Pak came to mind right away, who's a early video artist in the Fluxus movement, and that whole movement was really all over the place, but they also leaned on technology when they were also stripping away the ideas of performance and art. So as a technical collaborator, I can definitely say that there are people out there with the knowledge and the desire to collaborate in a real sense in order to not just fill in the details, but to lift the work up using what's available and current, so that the evolution happens smoother, so that you're not hitting and you're not swinging and missing when you're trying to grab onto a video element because you feel you have to keep up. And I say you in the general sense, not necessarily speaking about anybody's work at this table, but there is that desire to have that happen. That's all.
I know the guys at 49, 59 that did the War Horse and did did the projections on well, they've done a lot of operas and they've done a lot of stuff, and the Sydney Opera House, they did the projections on that and stuff like that. And they really, and I've collaborated with them. I mean, I got a week with Leo because I know his mom, and writer anarchist. But I could not have. I mean, So yes, I think those artists, and they do support the idea. They are working in a very, very tender and compelling way, with brilliance and rigor and talent. But yeah, it's a little on the testy side financially. Eh?
Yeah, it can be, for sure.
I saw a Broadway show recently, which I hadn't seen a Broadway show in probably about 15 years. And I was pretty shocked after having become very, very accustomed to the level of production of your average contemporary dance show here in Montreal, or even the international touring productions, to go see a performance that was installed in a Broadway theater and had that kind of a budget was a bit of a shock to my eyes and my ears. And one thing that I did feel was that it was almost more like the experience of watching a movie, in the sense that the sound was so clean, it almost seemed flat, and I almost was even questioning if the performers were lip-syncing, even though I knew intellectually that they weren't. And also with the lighting, and everything was just kind of very flat in a very funny way. And it got me thinking about this question of the relationship between the cinematic and the live performance, and how initially when we talk about when when television was first developing as a technology and we were filming theater works for people to watch at home, the emphasis was on making the television experience as close to the theater experience as possible. And now, because television and film are our dominant media, that's switched. And so as a performance maker who doesn't have the budget to do what Broadway is doing, I think it's really interesting to consider what the value of the live aspect of what we're doing is, and what the experience is to go to a theater or to go to a performance that's live. And I think it's a really rich place for us to be mining. I think that's why these immersive performances have really taken off. I mean, again, Punch Drunk has a huge budget, but it touches on something that you can go inside of, that's live, that couldn't function as film. Mm-hmm. And I think that's at least for me, that's where my interest lies now, is thinking about everything that live performance can do that screen media can't, because screen media does what it does really, really well.
There's so much nodding happening right now.
Yeah.
Can I jump in? What that makes me think of next, so in film now, there's this big thing that everybody wants to do, their 3D film. It doesn't really sell me. I'm just like it looks like a weird pop-up book, and that's why I'm like. But that being said, I did get to see Philip Spore's collaboration with Crystal Pite's 3D film, and see how like you can use that 3D quality to be something immersive, and so I guess I want to kind of open the conversation there, because that's kind of
I think
technology.
I saw that too, and I think I really enjoyed it, but I felt it really augmented Crystal's ideas, Transformers. I mean, seriously, it just augmented the idea, so there wasn't two things going. Clashing in that, all the clash can be good too, but there wasn't in that. And I would like to reiterate something that Dorian said about being in presence is so important, particularly as we become alienated with the computers and with technology. It puts a distance between us, and it's so precious. It's so incredibly precious to be in the room with people. It's a different thing. Or to have our voices weaving through somebody's life as they do their lives. Being in presence is just incredibly important, and it's incredibly important for our limbic system, our inner brain, our middle brain, the one that helps us have compassion. And if we get away from that compassionate brain, we're going towards if you don't have compassion, you don't make the links. You can't make the links. You lose the ability to make the links, and that the if you follow that down its natural sequence, it's not a good place to go. I think we're about to develop a fourth brain, which will again be compassionate, an integrative brain for all of the three that we have: the little lizard brain, our compassionate brain, and then our intellectual segmented brain. Fourth one coming.
One of the interesting things here, I feel, is that this all also comes down to the creative process of it. One of the problems with using technology often, I feel, is, as you're saying, Margie, the lack of human connection to some extent. And I feel that the projects where technology really works is when you can feel a distinct connection between the choreographer and the technician who's going to be using that technology. And Dorian, like in your case, you have a collaborator who helps you with the music, with the lighting, and with those technological aspects, and you've been working together for a really long time. Margie, you were mentioning, you have your lighting technician or designer that you've been working with for many years. There's a human aspect there where it's not so much a choreographer or a director who's just asking, do this. It's really, let's share something, and that's what's going to bring that human connection, and that where the human is not going to fade, and that presence also is not going to fade behind the technology, I feel.
Yeah, lovely point.
And with budgeting as well, and I think that's the main problem. It's always about the money. But the fact that you could probably only afford to bring in a lighting designer or a technician or a sound designer last at the end for that final stretch right before you're about to stage the show, unless you have like a really great friend of yours that does it and that's around and that you can have these discussions with. And I also feel this kind of maybe underlines something else, that as a choreographer or a dancer, the first person that will get paid in a production is usually the technician. Mm-hmm. Because that's just the reality of it. So it's an interesting relationship to feel that work is almost more valued because it implies a certain knowledge that's not the body, because everybody has a body. Everybody has the knowledge of their own body, whether it's more developed or more technical. That's a different thing, but I find that interesting. I'd love to know what all of you think of that, of
the economics of economics. Well, I think in society, if I just you don't mind I jump in, I think in society that we do have segments of work that are undervalued, and I think that I don't think it's good. I'm a little bit more egalitarian in that, but on the other hand, it is a reality, and I think that we have to look at how we raise ourselves and not lower others. that, and as long as we're doing that, we're moving forward on that agenda. But yeah, it's unfair. But you want to get your work out. I want to get my work out. So of course it's like, okay, yeah, don't pay me, put it in there, put it in there.
Yeah, so we have a lot of, choreographers who are also performing, also doing the lighting designing, and also doing, all of this other stuff that makes, that not only pushes other possibilities away, but you kind of spread yourself a little thin within that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of productions where I've gone to the tech because I know the artists and watched dancers standing around waiting while glitches in technology get fixed, and then they don't get the proper time on stage.
There's definitely a lot behind those situations of technicians or technical collaborators being paid first or being paid at all. Technical teams not necessarily living up to the billing. But at the root of some of those things is the fact that they are getting paid and some dancers are not, or maybe the costume designer is not, or the production manager is the boyfriend or the girlfriend and they're not getting paid for their time either. So there's a lot of pressure on those collaborators at that point, because if you're the person making the money in the room, then you have to be on point. So there's a lot of there's a lot of planning. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of planning for disaster and how you come back from that. There's a lot of dealing with the disaster and coming back from that, and then you run a perfect show and you go home.
I think that's excellent, interesting languaging for what's going on right now in the world. As we go into climate disasters, and planning for getting over it, coming around. Wow.
But when we get, when I do a show as a lighting designer, I do ask if the dancers are being paid, or at least try and figure out if the dancers are being paid, because it's important for me to know that everybody is part of the production team and being compensated for their time. Mainly because I'll just be, I guess, upfront. At this point in my career, I want to be working with people who are organized from the top down as best they can with the resources that they have. Because then what that tells me is that I'm going to be able to look after my section, and then any time that I have freed up, I know that I can move over and help. I have more lateral movement that way than if I was being hired as a do-all to look after a larger part of the technical collaborative aspect. Whereas if I'm looking after one department and I know that the dancers have everything they need and the choreographer has somebody helping them with publicity or somebody helping them with scheduling, and they have an outside eye, that everybody has a good energy and everybody has everybody's well rested in a way. Because that makes a huge difference. When you have to spread yourself thin, it shows. And when it shows is at the worst time possible, because it shows in Tech Week. It shows in Tech Week when the technical collaborators have to step their game up because they've been on the sidelines. So it's interesting that I've always found it interesting that there isn't more of a push for younger choreographers to get a production manager or an assistant before they find a technical collaborator to get into bed with forever, because I feel that right hand really frees up a lot of energy for them to choreograph and build their company and really solidify the foundation of their work.
Yeah, but I think you're talking about at a certain level, right? Because I remember when I started, I built my lighting board. I built it with dimmer switches, and we bought these things from these colored lights from Canadian Tire, and we plugged them in, and we had skinned wires, and we ran it around the place, and my boyfriend did the lights, and I had borrowed a little radio system and put my shit on it, and I had these little songs, and woohoo, no one can sue me.
Yeah.
What are they going to get? And danced and just did it and just did it and did it. But I did learn from the ground. I learned every aspect of what, I mean, I washed the floor, I put up the lights, I made the timber board with Jack. Yeah, so. Yeah,
I mean, there aren't a lot of
growing in that.
There aren't a lot of immersive experiences like that, actually, that choreographers get, especially ones that are coming out of a post-secondary education system. Mm-hmm. Because you're shepherded in a certain direction, and then depending on the philosophy of the school, the different aspects of production are introduced in different ways or not at all. So it's interesting to hear that
I have a lot of friends that come, out of Juilliard and stuff like that, and have had beautiful and wonderful training, and Linda Rabin working with Louis Horst and all these amazing people, right? And and yet I came out of like just sheer Arab, pagan passion, and I can't say one is better than the other, seriously, but it was I am grateful for my experience for that aspect of it. Yes, for getting my fingers and everything.
Yeah, I mean it shows in young choreographers or choreographers in general, who have had the opportunity to get their hands dirty, for lack of a better term. You see it in the way that they build their show, not their piece, because for me that's two different things when I say their show. The way they build their show makes a huge difference. If they have at least working knowledge or a common vocabulary with their collaborators, that comes back to the team having to come off the bench and step their game up, because now it's their time, and when the choreographer has the tools to do that with them, it shows.
Yeah, it breeds common language instead of, what are they doing?
Yeah, why is it taking so long?
Yeah, that's really irritating. Yeah. Because you don't know that other person's work or where they come from.
Yeah. At the end of the day, for myself in a production, I always refer to the people around me as the team, and everything is about. Sorry, I love sports, so everything is a sports reference, regardless of my dance background. And I really feel that the idea of a team with a central coach, more so than a leader, somebody that can bring everybody together and rally everybody towards the goal is ideal. And finding that common language and that common goal is very important. And the choreographers who are good at that are great at it. That kind of comes back to why I said that is at the end, how we started this conversation about technicians being paid first or whatever. It's unfortunately part of the reality, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they are part of the team and the goal is the exact same.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep, we have consensus on that at this table.
One thing about a coach, though, is that the coach, and what's going to make him the coach, is that he's going to understand every little corner. Yeah. And he's going to understand how, maybe not as a professional would, maybe not as someone who specialized in something, but he's going to understand what everyone's role is and how, like, the weaknesses, the strengths that are needed for that. And that's what makes it difficult, because as we mentioned, as a choreographer coming out of school, you don't necessarily have touched all of that. Finding people who have made it to a point where they can understand all of those elements, sometimes those people are going to be older or more experienced, so it's difficult to bring them into an emerging choreographer's work, maybe for financial or just connection or networking difficulties. And I feel that when you start, it's good to not necessarily have one centralized person, but know a lot of people who are good at a lot of things, so that you can just through discussion with them, like, bring those elements in and learn, so that you can yourself sort of take up that role of the coach, even as a choreographer.
One of the first shows I worked on as a production manager was a show. It was first show out of school that was being self-produced by a choreographer, and I was able to step into that role, and we filled in the details together based on our experiences, her immense dance background, and really getting what she wanted at that point in her career, getting what she wanted out of the dancers with her rehearsal director. And then I was able to fill in the scheduling with her and the granting and the lighting. And then also on the people side, based on my dance background, I was able to help her manage the company for the show, and through injuries and scheduling and rearranging. And sometimes it happens in a perfect storm, and there is a perfect storm at some points. And which is why speaking about dance and getting together with people to talk about things is important, because you make those connections. Because I wasn't in this ladies' class at Concordia, but we found each other through mutual friends and had mutual respect, and we were able to do this. Like there are opportunities. I think sometimes this is a bit of a generalization, so forgive me, but maybe it'll spark a different conversation. When you come out, or you are an emerging choreographer, sometimes choreographers in general, you get caught in the bubble, and you can't necessarily see that there are resources around you because you're so focus-driven. You're so focused on a goal. It's like, so sometimes you don't see that there are those people around you, maybe not in one person, maybe in two, where you can split your time, which is why I made the statement before. I find it interesting that people don't look for that right hand out of school or even early on in their career to help build. As somebody who doesn't choreograph for a living, I can't speak or begin to imagine why that doesn't happen. I just find it interesting that it doesn't.
This really does, actually, I do have something to say. And it does segue, that is actually a beautiful segue into something that I would love to talk about, which I think people are talking about a lot right now in Montreal and elsewhere, as well as budgets once again are being drastically slashed, is this question of resource sharing. And I think in Montreal also there's been a lot of discussion of intergenerational resource sharing and how more established artists can reach out to younger artists, and how unused resources like space can be redistributed. All these sort of questions about looking around at what we already have and how it can be used more efficiently. And I think I just would love to hear from other people on that topic. I've
been watching a whole bunch of PBS stuff as well on that, and just feeling it, and not just for dance, but globally, this is what we have to move into. We have to be able to, if we're going to not keep, if we're going to enter into a place where we take care of our planet, and we're more recyclable, and we're more energy resource efficient, and certainly as well as fusion coming about. And it's exciting, and I'm very hopeful, very, very, very hopeful for it, because I think also there's a generosity in that really thrills me, that people really do link back up to each other, and that they are engaged in that. I love that. I'm really hoping that there will be more of that. And as you say, you didn't actually say, but I think it can be hard for some of us to see what resources we have in the dance, because we're so used to, like, with the focus thing, you get like driven. We forget to say thank you sometimes because got it, man, I've been waiting for that for like 20 years. Now it's mine. Run, oh, got it. Yeah. Football down the thing. But so often we don't sit in gratitude, or look at our resources, or look at what we do have that we can put out there for sharing elements. Yeah.
The intergenerational exchange and this share of knowledge and resources really speaks to me, because I've been working for almost 2 years now with Ian Ferrier, who's from a different generation, different world, different practice, spoken word artist and musician. And I've been just so thankful to have him involved in my creative process. And at first, I kind of saw him more as a mentor, and now he's like a best friend and a very close collaborator. And so that's been lovely. And I didn't realize to what extent it would open so many doors, not only reaching out to the spoken word community and that whole other realm of possibilities for performing and for networking and meeting all these different people, but also, when it came to grant writing, you can't fake, 40 to 45 to 50, well, not 50, well, holy crap, 40 years of grant writing experience is really rich, and you can't learn about that in a book. And that's been extremely great for the company, and I think even Allison, who's been a really close collaborator and involved in this, I'm sure you've seen that as well, as how just these amazing people we've met that we would have never crossed paths with, and also this idea I think Tim was mentioning of resources. And being so focused on something that you don't realize what's around, and these people that could help you and maybe have the same goal, and you can go in that direction with them. I think, I work for the Fringe Festival here in Montreal, and I'm also a big fan of the Fringe. And I know that there's this like stigma of that not being a good opportunity because it's by lottery and it's not selected, and it's... So there's a lot of different opinions on that, but I think I pretty much had the best summer of my life with this Fringe tour that we just did, and did 26 shows where we had a technician, we had beautiful performances in these beautiful spaces, and an audience, and we got to tour the country. And there's, like, to me, that's the richest thing, and I could have never done that in Montreal, and just the people that we met along the way.
It's huge. It's a huge resource, and if we can't do our work, we can't get it better.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I'm on this Thanksgiving Monday. I'm so thankful for all of these things, and for all these people that we meet and cross paths with, and we do get stuck in our bubble. And I think that's the main idea, that this podcast, to kind of bring it back to, 100 episodes of talking to these really inspirational and remarkable people that help us get out of our bubbles, because we all have, thinking about like, oh yeah, I need to go finish that grant at home right when I get, and all these things that we need to run to, but to stop and take time and kind of sneak into other people's lives and other people's creative processes, and it actually helps all of us grow and understand ourselves, really. So yeah.
I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said you can't learn that in a book.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of that. I don't know how many times I've had conversations with people who are like, yeah, but they didn't teach us that in school. You're like, well, yeah, because some things are harder to learn in school, and some of the lessons that you learn best are through mentors and mentorships and experiences, and it's kind of been in the back of my head, but I know in terms of the lighting design discipline, the mentorship is dying, and I see that it's still alive in contemporary dance and choreography, but it's also on the verge of going the way of the dinosaur. And I always find it refreshing when I see work that I really enjoy, and then I see who mentored that person, who brought them along, and then you get that sense of community and tradition being passed down, really. And that's I feel like there's a bit of that missing at some points, especially in the Montreal community. Not to say that it doesn't happen, because friends of mine are being mentored by people, and they're very grateful for it. But I feel like I wish there could be more.
I think that part of I'm starting up a legacy project now. A lot of dance people have come to me and said, we want this stuff. We want it. The way you teach is unique. The way you do what you do, all this stuff, and this is unique and that is unique. We want in, because I'm now 62. 60 whatever anyway, and so where do you put this? But what we're discussing or dialoguing, which is exciting to me, is a horizontal mentorship instead of a vertical mentorship. So I think when it gets precious, it dies. And I don't like that. I just like, how does the work relate to your work? How can you take it further into the world that you're going to inherit, that you're going to see, that you're going to be with? And that can re-inspire me too, and keeps everybody, as you said with your elder mentor, that the mentoring shifted to a mutual inspirations, mutual deepenings, and mutual learnings, because we do need we need different things at different times in our lives, but when we reconnect, we create more of a whole. And I think that part of the legacy project, or the mentoring project, needs to be seen in more of a horizontal structure as opposed to a vertical structure, so that we become more egalitarian about this, and we share in a more realistic and inspiring and communal way.
I think that translates really well with what you were saying of like this more of an idea of a coach than a leader, and like, or I guess a leader is a coach, but whatever word you want to use, of that horizontal direction. And that's like the goal is the same for both, to kind of help each other in that way.
And that the relationship feeds both artists' practice. Most of the people I know who have mentored me, who've really been engaged, and it's been an effective mentorship, it's been because they're also really clear about how these kinds of relationships feed their own practice and recycle energy into their own ideas. And I think that that's something that it's interesting, I took part in a dancer's resource, what's the dancer's transition, they do the danse transit with the graduates. Oh, yeah. And one of the things that I was talking about with them, with this question of how important it is to seek out people who are already working in the milieu for these kinds of mentoring relationships, is to always be thinking also about what you have to offer to that relationship. And that can mean many, many different things. You may have a specific skill, or it may just be in terms of bringing energy to a situation and to a conversation. But that I think for artists just coming out of school, there can be this fear of taking, of always just trying to sort of latch on to someone, like a little one of those little fish that. But those fish serve a purpose. Hey, those little cleaner fish. You can be a little cleaner fish. Just this idea that it's a valuable relationship for both parties, and that you don't have to feel like you're simply imposing your needs as an emerging artist. It's an important role to fill as well.
I feel that might be one of the hardest parts of this, as someone who's new on the scene, as someone who's just starting out, to really believe in yourself and believe in the fact that you can bring something to someone who's got more experience, who's been more established, feeling that it wouldn't be just this vertical, this one-way relationship, but that you could actually also give something. And quite often, like in my case and other people I know's case, what's going to stop us from going towards people is this fear that you don't have anything to bring to them, that you're still just gathering everything around you, but that you don't have anything yet to offer, especially not to someone who's higher up. And this is hard to fight off.
I think when you're young, you don't understand. It's really hard to understand. Certainly was for me, to understand that dance is a tentative thing all the way along. I know a lot of people who are praised and sung and represent an awful lot of other people who are unpraised and unsung and should be. But the majority of the dance community, it's a tentative all the way through, right? All the way through, till the last breath. That's it. We're alive. It's a fragile. It's a fragile place, but there's strength in that fragility. There's place in that fragility, and I think when you understand that there's a softening about the fact that you're scared, we're scared. It's all a little scary, but that's being alive. It's just scary. It's just like, wow, yippee, and small scary is good because that's thrilled, woohoo, and that's our passion. So yeah. But it is hard to know when you're young that somebody else is feeling like standing there quaking in their boots, too.
I will just say, to go back to the Thanksgiving thing, I'm thankful to be here because you are all just confirming some of my worries and some of my fears and some of my experiences. And so it's really great to hear you all. I'm just going to say that.
I'm going to take it into a whole new direction, if you don't mind. One thing that Allison mentioned, and that actually, Margie, you mentioned later on, about either being bored by a show or hating a show. Mm-hmm. And you feel that is a kind of a taboo. Like, I mean, if someone asks you what you think of, what you thought of their work, you're not going to say, oh, I was bored, or I hated it. It's going to be, oh, it was interesting. It's not something that we're going to allow ourselves to accept, either boredom or hating a piece, yet that relationship between an audience and a work is very much part of reality. And I feel that it's important that we face up to it because being bored by a show or not connecting with a show is not actually a bad thing, I feel. Like sometimes it's just a very personal thing. And one thing I've learned from doing this podcast, and one thing that I feel that Dirty Feet is bringing all of us, is the fact that it opens us up to not judging a show purely on appreciation, but really opening up to everything else that it can contain. So I'd like to know, like, when you go see a show that you feel bored by or that you hate, how would you turn this into something else, something that can be positive?
Well, I've always said that, like, I just love going to see shows. Whether it's a great show or an awful show, I feel like it all brings a learning experience. And I think people need, I don't know, I've had a few people in my life that are just like, they're so hard on when they see something bad. I'm just like, just learn from it. It's like, I don't know, like, I think it's about the conversation. And also, like, they'll not go see a show if they already know that it's going to be bad. And it's just like, I feel like if we're going to be artists, we got to engage with the community. And if you want people to comment on your work, you have to equally engage and be willing to go to all sorts of work. Good, bad, great, awful, imaginary, and even, like, not even within your own, like, creative realm. You know, I think that's what creates really rich work. And going back to what you guys were talking about, like, you know, around the intergenerational mentoring and collaboration, like, I think that's exactly what creates rich work. It's seeing what's great out there. I think there's a theory out there that, like, cities that are producing just so much work are actually the ones that end up having great work, because you're bound to have shit performances, but, like, from that people learn and create greatness.
Also, every artist is going to go through a yucky phase. You're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. Mm-hmm. There's going to be things in your way where you can't, and that's it, and that's fine. We do have to go through periods, peaks and valleys, and every artist has to learn all the way through. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that when I was young, I'm not a big fan of criticism, because I think if you use the word criticism, it implies that you have to give negative feedback. But I do believe in supportive criticism, or supportive, not criticism, just a dialogue about what you've seen, where you're going. I had another word for it, and that's escaped me at the moment. But
feedback, constructive feedback.
Yeah, well, not constructive feedback. I find that a little bit too. But yeah, sharing or just letting people, constructive feedback would be fine. And so I think that in a way, it allows for this politeness that you're talking about is very useful. Is very useful, but we need to be honest. And actually, a lot of people are really in your face about we are in our faces about what we think, and a lot of artists really want to antagonize people. Certainly, they did when I was a kid, and I know they still do now. It's like backstage with artists going, "Woohoo!" They were so pissed off. They got so angry. They hated it. This is so great. I'm so excited. I'm like, what? Because I'm a big interconnector kind of person. I left a sports background because I didn't like competition. I was looking for some kind of greater coming together. So that's kind of alien to me. But I really get it, and I really appreciate it, and I love those people. I love their boldness and their wit and their audacity and crashing through that. So I think it's a good thing, and one of the reasons I do love and live in Quebec is because I think people are more willing here. We live in a society that propagates perfection, that propagates like everything is going to be perfect and wonderful and beautiful, and it ain't, and it isn't, and it won't. Shift, transformation, those areas of moving forward as a human species, the new metaphors that are created by art, that allow us to move forward in a healthy and sane and loving manner, and point out the places where we shouldn't go. I think those are really compelling. It's important to know where we shouldn't go. Don't do this. Look, I smashed this. Don't do this. That's good,
I'm reminded of a time when I saw a show that I really didn't enjoy, but 3 hours later, I was still talking about it with a companion that came to see the show with me. I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
This has done something to me. This has sparked something in me. I'm thinking. And I definitely agree, Phil. There's so many different ways of absorbing work and kind of making it work for you in one way or another. But that doesn't mean that I can't be disappointed.
Yeah.
And I do find that the more work I see, the harder it is to get me excited about it. And then when I do see something really exciting, it almost makes the stuff that I almost liked no good, if that makes any sense. When I see it work and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I like. This is what I want to see. This is why I love dance. And then it makes it harder for me to keep enjoying the mid-ground stuff.
There's an artist, Gilles Meyer, used to work a lot here, and I loved his work out of the theater community. And what I loved the best about it was he made the greatest, fabulous mistakes. Like the stuff that was crap was so wonderfully crap. It was all done for the right intention. It was so beautifully wrong. And yet he did other stuff that was just, they're within a piece. You'd have moments that were just absolutely miraculous, and then it would just go wham, boom, and crash and come back. But I loved how close to the surface of it all this human attempt at going further was, and these brave throwing oneself into space, and that guy jumping off the building, the blue person.
Risk is really important. I think more than anything, that's what we respond to, whether it's with elated love for what we're watching or absolute hate or total boredom. I'm actually not at all troubled by experiencing boredom, especially when it's a boredom that comes because my attention is being challenged, not because I feel like the artist is not challenging themselves. But yeah, risk, I feel like, is the number one thing that I look for now in a performance. But I also think that going to performance can be a lot more about just myself. And this, I think it was Claudia LaRocco, a journalist in New York, wrote a beautiful essay about, she's a critic, she sees a lot of performance, about watching performance as a spiritual or meditative practice, and how she sees the experience is less about sitting there and asking yourself the question, okay, what am I being given right now, and do I like it? And more about...
So New York?
Yes, and it's just very capitalist. It's just the way that we're sort of trained to watch things. But instead thinking about, like, what is happening and how do I feel about it, and what does that say about me, and what does that say about what's happening? And in that way, I can sort of, when I'm miserable in a performance situation, tapping back into that can remind me that I'm also engaged in a practice, and it's not just about the fact that I bought a ticket and I'm sitting in my seat. I was actually at something last night that was really boring, and I was really cold and uncomfortable, and there weren't very many people there, so I didn't feel like I could leave necessarily. But it was actually wonderful because it was like something really clear was happening, and I could tap into my experience as a spectator, and I really, really enjoyed it finally. Or valued the experience. So that's just been something that's really helpful for me to think about as we're wading through all of the inevitably maybe unsuccessful work that we see.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I wish artists and just people in general were not afraid of boredom. I find boredom is exactly where we start to think. We start to, like, just, I have all my friends, they're like, I can't go to the bathroom without bringing my phone. They're just like, they're so afraid of boredom that they're like, they always have to have their phone on them. And like, I was going to just say that exact point. Like, for me, my favorite moment when I'm watching a performance is when I just get lost in a meditative state where it's like this thing's happening in front of me, but it's just like, I see little things and then my mind just kind of goes in all sorts of directions. And then, like, I think it's that state of meditation that ends up inspiring me, because like my mind's just able to go anywhere. And going back to what you were saying, Allison, about like this, your struggle with like seeing awful performances. I think it's a good place, because you're honing your ability to recognize what is good. And I was watching this YouTube video. I forget the name of the author, but the video is called The Gap. If anyone want to go see it. And he talks about this idea of being able to recognize great work, and then, but like looking at your work and saying, well, it's kind of mediocre compared to what I'm recognizing. But then like the more and more you produce work, the more and more that gap kind of closes. And then eventually you're just kind of like on the same level as the performances that you admire. And I think that's a great place to be able to recognize. But I think that's what I was saying earlier, learning to just be inspired by anything, by any performance.
I really think that it's one of the things, it's really, really tough, and I don't know the answer, but I do know the question. And the question is that we can't, it doesn't seem that you need to practice your art in order to get good at it. And we don't. It's like you get a show and it's gone. And if it doesn't tour, and big companies are able to have co-producers, so they know that they're going to have a run of it. So maybe they open up in their home city, they open up in Montreal or whatever, and it's like, okay. And then you see that show come back around at the end of that tour, and you're like, whoa! I mean, the performers have just been able to slip into themselves like a glove and understand and nuances what art is, and they've been able to, instead of just get out of grosso modo and get into shifting and loving the thing to a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit over here, and get into that gradation that's just so incredibly compelling and thrilling, and to artistry. And thrilling to humanity, this ability to but we really have a tough time getting our shows. We have to throw them out there, then and then getting the resources and the time to be able to actually clear and clean them. Gilles, another thing I loved about him is he did his performances. He would do a month of just calling it work in progress. You'd go, you'd pay for your ticket, but just call it work in process. And it's kind of a wonderful thing, like Twyla Tharp writing on her grant things. I don't write grants, I make dances, send money. I mean, one person can only do it once, right? She got the money. But so I don't know that we can all do that, but in a way it feels like that's more honest about what we're actually doing, and that would help as our audience members to understand that we're going to something that hasn't had the chance to breathe and get into nuance, and nuance is art.
Mm. I've had like several conversations with my mentor in New York, Guido Luciani. We've been talking about this idea of like the work in progress shows, and I think it's a great idea. But like, it's unfortunate when shows only stay there. And I think what's been great with the work that me and him have been doing there is like we'll have like particular performances that we've done that are like, we're like, this is a work in progress for this show. And so like we have these little performances that are all leading up to this bigger thing. But like, yeah, I think
that's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should engage more in that, like the research process. And I guess it's probably because I come from like a media background. There's just like so much shit being put out into the universe in terms of like, because of YouTube and because of how easy media is, like in terms of filmmaking. That's why I'm like, because it's so easy to put out stuff now, people aren't taking the time to create. And that's why I'm like, okay, like I need to fall in love with this process of just experimenting and being honest with that experimenting phase, and then put out good work. I'm tired of putting out shit. I'm tired
Lovely.
of it.
I heard a quote recently that one of the symptoms of late capitalism is that everybody wants to be special and nobody wants to take responsibility. And I feel like that's exactly with this phenomenon of being able to diffuse media so easily and so quickly and put things out on a really large scale without necessarily putting in the work to make sure that what you're putting out into the world is of some sort of integrity.
Mm-hmm. But then just labeling
huge.
It, like you said, labeling it a work in progress. I think that's important. And I think that's what then the audience can engage with it, being like, okay, what do I think is working there, and what do I not think? And then you should create a platform for those kind of conversations to happen too.
Another thing that I just wanted to mention or toss in there is also As resources become scarce, I hope that we do not go back into a situation where it is just the people who are producing, who can produce, who have been allowed to produce, that are deciding what art is or not art is. There has got to be room. Our producers we have to kick and shove and push and make sure that they understand that there have to be exceptions to the rule, that they have to be willing to go, no, I don't always know, because they are deciding what can be seen and what cannot be seen. And as resources recede, that is going to I'm just red flag people. Red flag people. Make sure that keep your heart intact and keep your art intact and go with integrity. But be the exception to the rule. Be the exception to the rule. If that's who you are and what you are, be it.
And I think on that note, we will wrap up our 100th episode, anniversary edition of the Dirty Feet podcast. Again, around the table, we've had Phil Fortin, Margie Gillis, Dorian Nuskind-Oder, Stéphanie Morin-Robert, Tim Rodrigues, JD Papillon, and myself, Allison Burns. Thank you for listening.
Oh, I love that. Be the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way.
Beautifully said.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par
Produced and hosted by Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.